Welcome back. Chairman of the St. Lucia Fire Services Association, Shane Felix, is speaking with members of the media and says an outpouring of grievances experienced by SLFS members will soon be public knowledge, as he notes that the only way for issues to be addressed is to shine a bright light on the good, the bad, and the ugly. Solange Alfred tells us more.
Fighting fires is no joke. Brave men and women put their lives on the line to ensure that raging flames are subdued and lives are protected. However, with all procedures, there must be a follow-up report. This, Chairman of the Fire Service Association, Shane Felix, says is a sour point for the department.
And to start off by asking the media, when was the last time it is that you heard the St. Lucia Fire Service reported back to you on an investigation in terms of the outcome of a fire? But that issue goes far back to 2008, when we had a female officer who came from Seneca College in Canada with the qualification of fire investigation. That qualification was used to get the government to give the St. Lucia Fire Service 2 posts of fire investigators. However, the person who presented the qualification was never given the post. 2 other persons were given the post, and even in appointing them to those positions, the recommendation for their promotion was a lie, basically, that their qualifications were exaggerated.
Furthermore, Felix insists that recent fires be taken into consideration to truly grasp the extent of the problem that proliferates in regards to fire investigations.
Even the Rose Hill fire recently, I know that there's a former colleague of ours who went to the U.S. to study the same subject, fire investigation, was brought in from the U.S. to conduct the investigation at Rose Hill. But we have somebody here who's qualified with a diploma in fire investigation and has never been used for those things. In 2011, the former acting chief fire officer, Mr. Charles, was in the media informing St. Lucians that we have 2 appointed fire investigators. But we don't hear anything coming out of any fire investigations. And the point that I'm trying to make is that your advancement in the St. Lucia Fire Service has nothing to do with qualifications.
According to Felix, poor management of the Fire Service Department has led to the underutilization of qualified personnel.
I'm disappointed, first of all, with the management of the Fire Service for maintaining that type of status quo, for the Ministry of Home Affairs and the Ministry of the Public Service to be continue to accommodate that sort of thing, where once you are not a part of the status quo, you have no advancement in the St. Lucia Fire Service. And even as far as the Public Service Commission itself, that appointed people on the basis of a bold-faced lie, So again, this is a cry out to the authorities to look into the issues confronting the St. Lucia Fire Service. That is just one of them.
Felix went on to say that he remains ready to address the myriad of problems which confront the Fire Service Department. As he notes, the only way to bring redress to the many ills affecting the department is by highlighting the many injustices accommodated by the powers that be. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I am Solange Alfred.
The change of carnival dates is being blamed for the decline in national recognition and respect for the Lenten season. Anglican priest Father Christian Glasgow questions whether St. Lucia is still a Christian nation.
One member of the Anglican clergy has raised concerns over the decline in the impact of the Lenten season on the citizenry over the years. Father Christian Glasgow said the decline traces back to around the time the date of Carnival was changed. In 1999, following much opposition and criticism from the Catholic Church, the government of the day changed the date from the pre-Lenten season to the month of July.
In that sense, there was a connection between Carnival and Lent. And the Carnival was seen then as the time to get involved in things which we were about to give up for the Lenten period, as it were, to exercise fleshly desires with the understanding that come Ash Wednesday, we say farewell to the flesh. And so traditionally, in these territories, you had the Carnival Monday, Carnival Tuesday, and by midnight, Carnival Tuesday, the activities were cut off and people were ready to go to church for the Lenten confession, to receive ashes as a sign of their repentance. And this permeated the entire society then. The radio stations and the few television stations that we had then, they changed the tenor of their programming. I recall as a child, yes, I didn't grow up in St. Lucia, I grew up in St. Vincent, but in those days, come Lent, and for that entire period of Lent, you didn't even hear calypso being played on the radio.
Father Glasgow said today, we live in a secular society in which many are of the belief that church and state must be separated. Persons believe, he said, that the church ought not to influence the way the state thinks and functions. He went on to question whether St. Lucia really is a Christian nation in this day and age.
If the answer to that is yes, then the season of Lent becomes extremely important to this nation in terms of directing our behavior and our activities. For as a Christian nation, it then means that we'll take on board the understanding of setting this time aside as a special time to focus on things that are not so much of the world, but to also focus on the things that can assist us in our spiritual growth and development. And so you may have things like abstaining from the regular pleasures of the world, giving these up in order to take on other things, other sacrificial things to assist us in the spiritual growth and development.
Father Glasgow said each season calls on believers to focus on a particular aspect of the Christian life and the Christian journey.
In the case of Lent, Lent is one of the two penitential seasons of the church's liturgical year. And Lent, therefore, is a time when the church calls us to stop, to reflect on our lives, and to participate in some Christian disciplines and practices to help us to grow spiritually. So the period of Lent is a time when we have abstention, and even when we take on various activities. All of this is in the context of seeking to discipline our spiritual growth.
Lent is one of the liturgical seasons of the Church's calendar, beginning with Advent, followed by Christmas, Epiphany, Lent, Easter, and then the long period of Trinity. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I am Rochelle Gonzalez.
The implementation of the fourth round mutual evaluation program seeks to ensure that St. Lucia is ready for assessments with the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force. The assessors look to make certain the island's level of readiness on matters of compliance with money laundering, terrorist financing, and financing of proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. Solange Alfred gives us more.
With St. Lucia recently submitting to the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force, CFATF, the island is now gearing up for the impending assessment to take place in September. This assessment looks to qualify the island as one that is ready to fight against money laundering and other problematic issues like terrorist financing. At a recent training workshop for the implementation of the Mutual Evaluation Program, Attorney General Stephen Julian lauded the tireless work of the National Anti-Money Laundering Local Organization Committee, NAMLOC, as one that goes a long way in sensitizing the public on the key issues in regards to money laundering and the like.
To date, the National Anti-Money Laundering Oversight Committee, NAMLOC, continues to work assiduously towards adequately preparing stakeholders and educating the country about this process through numerous meetings, publications, infomercials, brochures, and other means. I ask that you continue to provide the support when called upon to do so. And I also wish to take the opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, to extend heartfelt gratitude to the team from the CFATF as they continue to provide invaluable support to St. Lucia. This training session bears testimony to the support of your organization, but we still have far to go in this relationship, as the mutual evaluation report will be drafted after the on-site visit in September.
Deputy Executive Director of the CFATF, Joanne Daniel, encouraged participants of the workshop to gather an in-depth knowledge of the processes and procedures highlighted to ensure that the island fully benefits from the experience.
St. Lucia has certainly and continues to demonstrate its commitment to countering money laundering, terrorism financing, and proliferation financing, and as indicated by the Honorable Attorney General, has already begun the process of its fourth round evaluation with its submission of the completed technical compliance questionnaire as a first step in the process. During the upcoming on-site in September, the focus of the assessment team, which will be led by Mr. Jefferson Clark as mission leader and supported by Ms. Joanne Hamid, co-mission leader, both of those are here with us today. The focus will be now on the effective implementation and assessing how well St. Lucia actually implementing these FATF recommendations. As a CARIFORUM member state, St. Lucia has benefited from the 11th EDF funding, and we ask and we urge that you take advantage of the opportunity. We want these sessions to be very interactive. Please ask all questions. This is the opportunity just before your on-site visit to get further clarification and ensure that you have a very clear understanding of what the recommendations require.
The efforts put forth fall in line with the government of St. Lucia's continued efforts to combat money laundering and terrorist financing. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I am Solange Alfred.
Godfrey Ferdinand holds on to his spot as the head of the National Council of Public Transportation following an election which was held on Sunday. Ferdinand won in an 18-5 vote over his opponent.
Godfrey Ferdinand has held on to his title as president of the NCOPT after a stunning victory of 18-5 during an election held on Sunday. Ferdinand said his victory shows that it was just a handful of people who were not satisfied with his leadership. He said under his leadership, the organization will be held to high standards.
This new executive is a very strong executive in that every member that sits on that executive have actually served in a capacity as president or secretary of the said association. We were given a mandate, and that is to work towards all the outstanding reports, the financial report, the secretary's report, and that we will do in the coming months. We are also given the mandate of upgrading the system and giving the system a new face. So obviously we will be looking at having all operators in uniforms, having operators be certified, and also having improve the system in terms of a cashless, and see how far can we go with at least a bus terminal before our tenure.
Ferdinand expressed his gratitude to all for trusting in his leadership and for all those who supported the NCOPT overall.
I would like to thank all my past executive members. I'd like to thank all the persons at the ministry that have made it a good working relation. I would like to thank both ministers of transport that I have served under, and that is Mr. Pierre and Mr. Guy Joseph. I would also like to thank the Prime Minister, well, the former Prime Minister, which is Kenny Anthony. I find that these individuals have a very keen interest in the sector, and that they handle the sector with a lot of respect and a lot of reasoning. They always dialogue with us, so I would like to thank them. But I also would like to thank the former Chief Transport Officers in person of Annette Augustine and Lenita Joseph, and one dear friend of mine in person of Mr. Pierre, Franklin Pierre, who was a former transport officer, and Mr. Nigel Joseph, the past transport coordinator. Our working relationship was really good. It's a pity that most of them are not there anymore, but I do appreciate the fact that through their effort and the effort of the past executive, we were able to achieve a lot.
Ferdinand said over the years, the organization has grown in leaps and bounds. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I'm Rochelle Gonzalez.
You're watching the Hot 7 Nightly News. When we come back, residents from the town of Soufrière now get to enjoy the Hummingbird Beach Park, and the William Peter Boulevard is scheduled for a facelift.
Thank you.